electorally, it doesn't stack up for me, to be quite honest with you, because I think there's actually a pretty significant proportion of Conservative voters who will be appalled by this kind of discriminatory language and not taking swift action. Like Suella Braverman has said, she actually went one step further than Lee, right? Because she said not only were the Islamists in control, but also the anti-Semites were in control. And I think the hard left. I think she also said the hard left. We'll figure that out. She's still in the party. Mm-hmm. She's still got the whip. That's fine.
But that's my point. As in, the people who are appalled are voting Labour. The Conservative voters is such a small percentage now that what can you do to it? Like at this point, if you're still saying you're going to vote Conservative, like okay, there's probably nothing that will turn you. The only thing that will turn you against you is, that will turn them against the Conservative Party is reform suddenly becoming an attractive proposition.
I don't agree with that. I think that there's a sensible number of One Nation Conservatives who genuinely believe in like going to church and, not paying a ridiculous amount of tax, and they will vote for the Conservatives.
But are they still there in any great number?
But I mean, what I'm saying is that I think it's not fair when we say just if they're not going to vote Tory, they're going to vote Reform. It's not like
that's exactly the point I'm making, right? Because I think there are the people who are switching to Labour. There are the people who won't turn out to vote. People forget that there's a significant part of the Tory electoral map that involves contest with the Liberal Democrats, right? That there is this the soft left of the Conservative Party, the people for whom they will hear things like this and be like, "What the fuck? What is this? This isn't One Nation Toryism. This isn't allegedly soft like David Cameron Liberal Tory Party. This is." Insane.
Yeah, but my point is they've gone already.
Like North Shropshire, that would be a seat where you could get a Tory back in there. But that's Lib Dem at the moment. That went to Helen Morgan. But that could go back Tory. And those would be the sort of people who would go, that sounds a bit weird that one of the Conservatives is out there shouting about Islamism fundamentalism.
I mean, they've got a long history of this, right? They've got a long history of it. Zach Goldsmith, in his mayoral campaign, he said something very similar to Lee, that basically sort of he had mates that Sadiq Khan had mates who were sort of terrorists. Sadiq Khan was a sympathiser. Sean Bailey during his, it's basically just the Tory mayoral candidates. I'm surprised we haven't had a word for Susan Hall yet. But
we have actually. So Susan Hall's actually said that she can't deny how disgusted she is daily by the abuse that Sadiq Khan receives.
Really?
Yeah, she said that even though our policies are completely different and we don't agree on much, I can identify that. Now, if you've got Susan Hall identifying it,
saying something sensible, then you've got
so we're wrong.
no. Because your position is so warped. Susan Hall is now the sensible one. Is my point.
So I can't remember if I actually got the sentence out earlier, but what I was saying was I think that the whip dropped him because it came to blows during that phone call when he was refusing to reply. And I think they sort of dangled it as a threat and Lee Anderson just dug his heels in. I don't think that they had any intention of suspending him that day. They wanted it to just be a quick apology, brush it under the rug, move on. This is not what they planned.
Didn't apologise. Yeah. Sean Bailey retweeted is it mad? It said he retweeted a photo that called Sadiq Khan the mad mullah of Londonistan. That's Sean Bailey. 2019 Sajid Javid leadership election bounces all the candidates to committing to an independent inquiry into Islamophobia in the Tory party. That still hasn't happened, has it? Boris Johnson, women in burqas look like letterboxes. It's an extensive history of Islamophobia in the Tory party, I think.
I think though, so those are the more outlandish comments, right, that are quite obvious and identifiable as terrible things to say. But what I think the problem is that we started out by saying Sadiq Khan is a Muslim. Then a couple of years later, it was very normal to say the Muslim mayor of London. And then a couple of years later, we started talking about Islamism. And I think that Lee Anderson is probably confused because this is the sort of language that is quite normal and has been quite naturalised over the past few years because it's been a slow, slippery slope. And it's not... To him, I don't think he sees that as racist. I think he sees that as just like one step on from what we've been saying for the past 10 years about Sadiq Khan, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I struggle with this. I had people calling me on LBC this weekend saying it's not racist. What's happened, and I think that's worrying. To be quite honest with you, the fact that people can't understand that saying that because someone is Muslim, he is therefore a terrorist. They can't understand, or friends with terrorists, I think is the clarification that Lee Anderson would insist on. They can't understand that making that jump from, relatively irrelevant characteristic about an individual to making this assertion about their personality or, their politics. They can't see how that there's a degree of discrimination involved in that, which is quite, that's worrying.
It also is being used, the term Islamism is being used to delegitimize the pro-Palestine marches, but describing it as, delegitimize British Muslims from taking democratic actions like forming protests if they can just widely be discredited as that's an Islamist thing. Because the average punter, that people understand what Islamism is radical fundamental Islam. And if you are an uninformed voter, uninformed person, and something that's being described as Islamist, because a Muslim is doing it, it's automatically discredited.
Yeah, so it doesn't stack up, right? Because those marches, it's a multi-ethnic coalition of people on those marches, right? It's not just British Muslims who are on those marches. There are plenty of people from different religious backgrounds, different ethnic backgrounds attending those marches. And just for the sort of like a sake of definition of terms, what does Islamism mean? It means kind of an implementation of a Muslim state, right? It's the conversion of the political process of society, of governments to, a Muslim one, right?
That's exactly what he's doing. You fucking call Lee Anderson up.
And then people start, saying things. So there's just, I'm saying that because there's then shades, right, within Islamism. So there's peaceful political groups that are committed to Islamism, right? But they're not, you can't call them, they're not terrorists. Mm-hmm. Whereas you do get radical Islamists, which are then people who are prepared to commit acts of violence, acts of terror in order to achieve those same aims. So that's a definition that's worth putting out there. And I think I find it interesting because what are the things that people get really upset about when they invoke the boogeyman of Sharia law? Like, what are the things that they're worried about, right? It's like freedom of expression, freedom of association, the things that characterize our modern democracy. And yet, on the other hand, you have a man who is Prime Minister and certainly not a Muslim in Rishi Sunak, legislating some of the most draconian crackdowns on our civil liberties, our right to protest. A story this week actually coming out from the Financial Times that John Woodcock, the former Labour MP, now Lord Wolney, is making a recommendation as part of this report he's doing into policing political violence to possibly ban protest from outside democratic buildings like the Houses of Parliament. If that's not being put forward by Muslims. That's being put forward by the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Mm-hmm. Suggests that Islamists are in control. No. They're not. They're not at all.
I'm really interested about the MP safety conversation that's been going on for the past few days. I'm just for those who like to do bad faith arguments. I'm not for once suggesting that
I'm drafting a comment.
When we're right in the shadow of David Amos and and Joe Cox, I'm not for once suggesting that MPs aren't put into danger because I actually find it astounding how they're allowed to walk about by themselves and people are nuts and we've ramped people up into a frenzy that means they want to attack people. Anyway,
well, they've just expanded that, haven't they? I think it was this weekend, and 3 female MPs now have
security,
protection police officers,
which is what Sadiq Khan has always had, and the reason for that is not because he is so important that he thinks he needs security. It's because people try to attack him all the time. But I was thinking about it, and I was listening to some of the complaints that MPs had about interactions with the public, and it really annoyed me. They were like, I'll be walking through my constituency, someone will come up and they'll want to talk to me. Yeah, you're there to serve them and you should listen to them. And there are a few Labour MPs, some of the videos that I've seen where people are quite upset about, sorry, I'm going to sneeze. Sorry.
Don't look at her when she's about to sneeze.
They normally zoom
avert your eyes!
No, but they normally zoom in the camera when I'm about to sneeze, that's what I have to say.
Nostril cam.
When I blew my nose on here once, and it's literally like you're talking, and the camera's on me.
This is the good stuff.
Cool. Anyway, So there was a couple of videos of Labour MPs, and in those there are constituents who are asking them about their stance on Gaza, and they're asking them to do something about Gaza, and they're asking, why aren't you listening to our protests? And their response is to completely ignore them, to walk away, to get into cars and drive off. And I think that is appalling. I think it's your job as a public servant to listen to your constituents. You're not meant to be this really high-profile person that gets to just shut the door and slam the door and say, I know what's best. I mean, look at Rachel McLean today. She's talking about how her constituents are writing into her about Lee Anderson and why he should be in the party still. Well, are their constituents writing in about Gaza? Like, why aren't you listening to those concerns as much as you're listening to the concerns about which MP is still in the party?
I think it's really important to not conflate legitimate criticism, scrutiny and accountability of MPs, which are key parts of the democratic process, with abuse and legitimate threats of violence. Like, we're not I know you're not minimising in any way. You mentioned it already, but they are separate things.
Definitely.
And it's a political trick to conflate the two, to basically say that because I don't know, 20 people get arrested at a pro-Palestine demo, that therefore the hundreds of thousands of other people that are in attendance are abusive, violent, dangerous, because it doesn't stand the most basic level of scrutiny. That a protest similar in scale to Glastonbury has a similar arrest rate to Glastonbury, where you've got 250,000 hippies in a field on MDMA.
Islamist hippies?
Yes, Islamists, and they're on drugs.
Islamist hippies!
The Islamists have discovered ecstasy.
The pyramid stage of the mosque now.
They're all high.
Call to prayer.
You see them all singing? That's the call to prayer.
Chris Martin has taken over the pyramid stage.